And cutting spending. So what are you planning to cut if you hit office? Would you look at introducing efficiency dividends for public service departments? Because that is something to make sure the federal public service actually does cut when a minister asks them to.
Yeah, and, Labor's added 36,000 Canberra-based public servants. We've said that's too many. We've said it should be under 200,000. We'll say more about the details of that.
Efficiency dividends, are they on the table?
Well, we'll say more about the details of that as we get closer to the election. The election hasn't been called yet. We've been unambiguous in saying that addition in public servants is inappropriate. We don't want to cut essential services, but we do think adding bureaucracy is not appropriate.
Could you cut 36,000?
Well, I'm not going to give you the number today. We've been clear that it'll be under 200,000. But what I will say is that you don't strengthen the economy. You don't make sure you beat inflation and boost growth by adding bureaucracy. We need to build businesses, not building bureaucracy, and that's what we've seen under.
What's your view of the government subsidy of Whyalla steelmaking?
Well, I mean, there's a lot of details we haven't seen on this. We've been very clear that we don't think putting money into the green hydrogen project that Chris Bowen's been on about since forever is appropriate. That's not how taxpayer money should be spent. We want steel making, but we think that's a completely unrealistic time frame for green hydrogen to be part of that steel making process. And so there's another bit of government spending that we think is inappropriate at this time. What we do want to see is steel making survive and prosper in this country. That is important, Andrew. And we'll continue to look at options to do that. What we don't think the right answer is for the government to run the steel mill. We've got a Prime Minister who can't run a government, let alone a steel.
But you want to run a 7 nuclear power stations. That's your own big government spend on industry. Peter Dutton indicated in recent remarks that after a time these nuclear power plants could be privatised. Is that the coalition plan?
Yeah, right now our focus is on getting affordable, reliable energy into the system. In the short term, it'll be gas. We know we've got to get more gas into the system alongside the record level.
And eventually you want to build 7 nuclear power plants.
And the base load, zero emissions power we get from nuclear power stations are part of our policy, Andrew. And
would they eventually be privatised?
Well, I'm not going to get into. We've been clear that these will be publicly built, and that will deliver a return on investment, and that's all been part of our budgeting for the nuclear power stations.
But eventually they could be privatised.
Again, our focus is on publicly built nuclear power stations. Look, utilities are different to other parts of the economy. They always have been.
Where are you getting the hundreds of billions for that?
Well, let's be clear. This is out to the 2030s.
Borrowing?
And this is investment. This is not on-budget spending. So It's very different, Andrew.
You certainly criticise them for off-budget spending. Now, what will it say if, as expected, the government decides to go to an election before delivering a budget?
Look, who knows? I mean, what goes on inside Anthony Albanese's head as he's thinking about when to decide on election? Well, the one thing I know is he'll focus on the politics. What we do know from their past budgets is that there's red ink as far as the eye can see, and no doubt there will be in this one. So does he want to reveal that again to the Australian people? I'm not sure. That's a question for him. But what I do know, Andrew, is if we get another 3 years of Labor, we'll continue to see the economic mismanagement we've seen in this 3 years, and Australians have paid a high price for that.
Briefly, do you think Jim Chalmers should deliver an economic statement if he doesn't deliver a budget?
Well, I do think he's got to clarify a number of the issues in his agenda that we don't know the answers to. I mean, of the $110 billion of spending we've opposed, how much of it has he spent? How much of it has he spent? Yeah. What's happened with the contingency fund? I mean, how much of this health announcement has already been budgeted for and how much is not? We don't know the answer to those questions. There's a lot of government spending that we don't know about. Right. We don't know how he's going to pay for all these extra public servants a couple of years ago.
Speaking of spending, your policy of a tax break on work lunches for small to medium business, how much do you believe it will cost the budget? Well, because the government says over $1 billion.
Well, the government is making this stuff up. I mean, really, honestly, it's pathetic. And
it's Treasury, right?
Well, except it's clear that the government was seeking to politicise the Treasury. The government asked Treasury to model coalition policy. You know that is a complete breach.
Well, how much does it cost?
Well, we've been clear that it'll be under $250 million, and we'll come out with the detailed costings for that and everything else in the lead up to the election. And we don't know when the election's even going to be.
Just lunch, Andrew. Not golf?
It's been clear. It's been clear all along. This is focused on meals. That's the focus.
Can't play golf first. Okay, I wanted to ask it finally, sorry, on a serious note, about these Chinese live firing exercises between Australia and New Zealand. The government doesn't seem too concerned, although Penny Wong has spoken to Whyalla about it. They seem concerned about the notice as opposed to the practice. What's your reaction?
Oh, well, I just think they're not standing up for their national interest. I mean, there needs to be mutual respect in these relationships, and that's about more than just notice. I mean, saying you need notice for someone to sit off your coast and engage in gunboat diplomacy, which is exactly what's happened here. I mean, that's completely unacceptable. And the government needs to say that very clearly. I mean, look, it's important we have the best possible relationship we can with China. There is no doubt about that. But it has to be in the context of mutual respect. And what's happened here and what's been happening in recent days, more generally, with the flaring we saw a week ago or so, is not within a relationship of mutual respect.
Angus Taylor, thanks so much for your time.
Good to be with you, Andrew.